13th century military construction was a grinding, industrialized process. In the late 1200s, North Wales was the site of a systematic military occupation, a far cry from the stylized chivalry often associated with the era. King Edward I approached the conquest of Wales as a calculating systems engineer. Following his military campaigns into Wales in 1277 and 1282, Edward realized winning field battles against the Welsh princes was insufficient to actually hold the territory. Rather than endlessly chasing insurgents through the mountains, he opted for a permanent architectural solution to lock down the landscape. He commissioned the Iron Ring, a massive interconnected grid of stone fortresses deployed across North Wales to project constant offensive power. Edward weaponized masonry and geography, turning defensive structures into an inescapable tool of state-level subjugation. The geography of North Wales presented a severe logistical problem. The rugged, mountainous terrain heavily favored asymmetric guerrilla warfare by the local population. Pushing traditional land-based supply lines through those mountain passes left English carts and troops highly vulnerable to ambush and blockade. Edward bypassed the land entirely. He positioned his most massive fortresses strictly along the coastline, designing them to function as unassailable naval beachheads. This established a direct, secure logistical pipeline. Ships could load supplies at the English sink ports and sail straight to the walls of the Welsh fortresses. Fortresses like Harlech were built directly into rocky coastal outcrops, integrating their defensive walls with the water level to ensure cargo ships could dock safely. This system faced a critical test in 1294, when a major Welsh rebellion led by Madog ap Llewellyn isolated the English garrisons. Completely cut off by land, the garrison at Harlech survived an extended siege, solely because ships maintained a continuous flow of food and weapons across the sea from Ireland. The true operational foundation of the English occupation relied entirely on controlling the water. The ultimate expression of this lethal engineering is Beaumaris Castle on the Isle of Anglesey. The perimeter features walls 36 feet high and 15.5 feet thick, completely encircled by a tidal moat. Edward employed Master James of St. George, a highly experienced architect from the county of Savoy, to execute this exact design. This diagram illustrates a concentric blueprint. A concentric castle effectively places walls within walls to create independent fallback positions. At Beaumaris, a specific trap exists. The outer entrance, the gate next the sea, does not align with the inner gatehouse. If attackers breached the outer gate, they were forced into a predictable, exposed rightward turn to reach the inner gate. That specific path was covered by overlapping fields of fire from the taller inner walls, annihilating anyone making that turn. Through calculated geometry, Master James turned a static stone structure into an active, industrialized killing zone. The true engine of the Iron Ring was extreme economic mobilization. Edward committed to a series of state-bankrupting mega-projects that exacted a massive toll on the English population. Building Beaumaris alone required a conscripted army of 1,800 workmen, 450 stonemasons, and 375 quarriers operating on-site at the same time. Pulling that many skilled laborers from across the country placed a severe, immediate strain on England's domestic workforce. This chart shows the expenditure of the Welsh conquest, roughly £173,000, plotted against the English crown's average annual revenue. The total cost of the operation eclipsed the kingdom's annual income of £40,000 by more than 4 times. At Beaumaris, wages drained £270 of silver a week. The royal treasury was quickly exhausted, forcing officials to pay the workforce using leather tokens instead of actual coinage. Edward's desperate need for capital had severe domestic consequences, driving him to aggressively expand the use of parliamentary taxation across England. This crushing financial pressure also directly contributed to the 1290 Edict of Expulsion. Edward expelled the entire Jewish population from England in order to seize their assets and pay down the crown's spiraling debts. In order to forge this inescapable architectural grid, Edward bankrupted his own state and radicalized his domestic policies. But the fortresses themselves were only one half of the subjugation system. Edward also constructed bastides, A bastide is a heavily fortified, planned town anchored to the defenses of a military fortress, designed to house colonial settlers. At Conwy, the town walls form a continuous, unbroken circuit of defense that ties directly back into the castle's main structure. These grid-planned settlements were a form of demographic weaponization. They were built exclusively to house English migrants, and native Welsh inhabitants were strictly banned from living inside the walls. To clear the surrounding land and remove immediate threats, the English military conducted systematic deportations of the local Welsh populations. When constructing Beaumaris, Edward targeted Lenfas, the wealthiest Welsh borough on the island. The English forcibly uprooted the entire population and relocated them 12 miles away to a new settlement called Newborough. This physical and economic displacement severed local insurgencies from their historical networks of logistical and social support. The architecture functioned to economically strangle the native population while simultaneously incubating heavily protected English administrative hubs. Despite the immense capital investment and extreme human cost, the machine of the Iron Ring was never actually completed. As the 13th century drew to a close, Edward's attention and the royal treasury were abruptly diverted to fund a new series of wars in Scotland. Construction at Beaumaris ground to a permanent halt by 1330. Its massive inner towers remain only a fraction of their intended height. Yet the political legacy of the project was permanent. The staggering debt accumulated by these fortresses forced structural, lasting changes to the English Parliament's role in authorizing national taxation. The Iron Ring replaced the tactical unpredictability of field combat with the slow, industrialized mechanics of permanent stone-based subjugation. Edward secured his conquest not by winning field battles, but by cementing English dominance through the sheer, inescapable gravity of stone and logistics.